Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to This Week in Sports. And we got a lot to talk about. Let's start with the big game, right? This is a huge game. Manchester United beat Liverpool. And I am still pretty happy about it, right? Not gonna lie. A little bit nervous for next week, but this was a good win. It was a very good win. And let's start with Man United. Okay, they scored on very early on. Brian Mbeumo in 63 seconds, assisted by Ahmed Diallo. It's a great goal. And then they did concede. Um, After that goal, it was a lot of Liverpool going forward. You had Cody Gakpo hitting the post a number of times. Um, but outside of that, there weren't really many huge chances. I know Salah did miss a big chance. Isak did was 1-on-1, but they weren't convinced. Liverpool weren't very clinical. Even Cody Gakpo's goal that he scored, he hit it in the top corner from like 2 yards out. He very nearly missed it. Like he had the whole goal to aim for, and he almost skied it. But he was probably their best player. It's just unfortunate for them that 5 minutes later, Man United go up the other end. Harry Maguire scores a goal, 2 goals from 3 shots on target, and that was the game. Man United did outplay Liverpool. They did definitely deserve to win. The stats might not show it, but if you go back and you watch it, Liverpool weren't clinical enough. They weren't convincing enough. You could say that hey, maybe they score a couple of chances. I mean, Gakpo misses a wide open header, um, basically an open goal at 2-1 down. You think okay, they could come back and make it 2-2, but there was never a moment where you were sitting there and watching the game and going, Liverpool could win this. You could always sit here and say, it could have been 2-2. They could have scored 4 goals, but when it was 1-1, they gave up their grip on the game. They clawed their way to 1-1 and didn't do anything with it at home, which was really embarrassing. Now, if you look at the league table, Man United only sit 2 points behind Liverpool. Liverpool have a three game losing streak in the Prem, and I know they did win the Champions League. I'll talk about that more next week. But in the Prem, 3 losses in a row, and I believe they go to Aston Villa next, which isn't easy. They just beat Spurs. But if you look at this lineup, um, Isak had a stinker. Vert's not starting, I think, was a mistake. For me, Ekatike is their best player this season, and him not starting is shambolic, really. Kirkes didn't have a good game. Gakpo was probably their best starter on the field. Um, Unlucky, you could say, but that is the how the game goes. And I think the notable thing is outside of Dallo, every Man United player they they played well. I mean, all of them, they all put in a shift and they all gave their heart. Dallo didn't perform well, but they all gave something that they should, hold their heads high, like proud of, and go into next week looking looking for a looking for a similar result or a better result. They're at home to Brighton, should win that one. Now here's the other big news in the Prem. This game here, Chelsea Nottingham Forest, and Forest lost. More notably, Ange Postecoglou was sacked. And Forest could be in trouble. I think now that their manager is Sean Dyche, this is wrong. He wasn't manager for this game. They're going to be a lot more pragmatic. They're going to be a lot more defensive. They're going to go back to kind of how they were playing under Nuno. It might benefit them. There might be a bounce back, but they are in a rather interesting position. And I think the bigger thing is that an interesting position is 5 points. 5 points from the opening 8, which is completely opposite to their stellar campaign last season, right? And so now you're looking at this and you're thinking, what's going to happen? Chelsea looked pretty comfortable, as I assumed. Another shocker is Bournemouth are playing pretty well as well. After they haven't lost since their opening day at Liverpool, and that's something to look for. That's something to look for. Team to watch so far, but Forest are kind of shocking. I don't think they're relegation bad necessarily, but they they need to turn things around. And I think they can. I think Sean Dutch is a good enough manager. This is his position. This is what he's known for. Relegation battle, win some points, and they have a good team. I mean, you look at that team: Morgan Gibbs White, um, Elliot Anderson, Murillo, Sells, Zinchenko, David Luiz. Like they have a good team. Douglas Luiz, sorry, I say David Luiz. Chris Wood was on the bench. Um, Callan Hudson Odoi. There are good players throughout this team that they should be going and winning games. Maybe not Chelsea, although recently they have been playing well against Chelsea. But you know, it's something to look up towards in terms of their team. Oh, scroll way too far down. Other matches, I don't think many other matches were that important. I think this Crystal Palace Bournemouth game was very interesting, very intriguing. Jean-Philippe Mateta scoring a hat trick, registering them at the highest XG since the XG stat was tracked in Premier League. He's good. That chance at the end of the game I mean, a lot of those shots were just shots, random shots, but he had an opportunity to score more here, and you might think maybe he should have taken it, but he was clearly their best player. You know, scoring a hat trick is always good. And Palace are themselves a good team. Both of these teams are teams to look at. I mean, they are 2 points. They're literally one result flipped, and you know it is something to look for. They are two teams to look for this season. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the Premier League. And I'm not going to speak on the Champions League this week. But let's move on to baseball. And and baseball was the biggest thing this week, although it won't make the title because Man United are more important to me. But the ALCS ended. It was a game seven. But to get to that game seven, we had to look at game six. I did look at all the other earlier games. A lot of the earlier games were very interesting. Mariners went up 2-0 away from home. They brought it back to Seattle and dropped the next two games. So now it's tied 2-2. They're losing 2-1. Bottom of the eighth, they dropped 5 runs to win 6-2 at home to bring the series back to Toronto. They just need a win to close out the series, and they didn't get it. And let's talk about this. I mean, if you look at some of these scores, 13-4, 10-3, it was kind of like blowouts on 8-2, 6-2, 6-2. There were a lot of blowouts, a lot of big home runs in the series. You look at this game, game six, I want to talk about very briefly because we're going to get to game seven. And you have home runs from Vladdy, you have a home run from Barger, you have a home run from Vladdy, home run from Barger, and just all around, good hitting to take it to a game seven that was, in the end, fatal for the Mariners and clinical for the Blue Jays. And let's talk about it. They first inning starts off hot. Both teams get on the board. They get a run in. Silence in the second inning. In the third inning, solo homer from Julio Rodriguez, and that's what starts this game off. Then there's a couple of scares, I believe, in these innings with multiple base runners, but it does nothing. And then you get a solo shot from the big man Cal Raleigh, and 3-1 up. You're looking in a pole position, but that's when the Blue Jays turn things on. This is when their bullpen they start to really ramp up the the heat, and you see after that fifth inning, no hits were given up. That's right. All of Seattle's hits came in the first 5 innings. With I believe that last one being the home run. Maybe there could have been one or two after it, but yeah, the last hit being the home run, and that's rather interesting. And it's kind of quiet on the other end. Although I will say, everyone on the Blue Jays starting lineup got a hit. There were 10 hits. All of them got hits. Now the interesting thing is all of them were singles, so they were playing a lot of small ball here. Not many extra base hits, just the one crucial one that we'll talk about in a second. All right, you hit bottom of the seventh. You're down 3-1. You have runner. You get your first two guys get on first and second. That's when you have who was it? I think it's Jimenez. Yeah, Andres Jimenez, sack bunt. Bring two runners to second and third. And you're thinking, let's bring in a run. Let's bring in two runs. A single will do that. A single could do that. Double will definitely do that. And um, you're looking at tying up the game, maybe getting a bit more of a rally. In comes George Springer, first pitch, ball. Now you're looking at a count 1-0, good count. Second pitch, he swings, it's out. It's a 3-run homer, and it's probably one of the biggest home runs of his career. Definitely one of the biggest home runs for the Toronto Blue Jays in their history. Um, and that seals the fate for all Mariners fans. That 3-run home run was the only extra base hit that they'd given up, and it was the most fatal one. Blue Jays go ahead 4-3, and they don't look back. Hoffman comes in the ninth inning, strikes out the side, which is impressive, which is very good for him. And the Blue Jays go to the World Series. They will be facing the Dodgers. I will speak more on this next week, obviously, once things start to happen. But the big bad Dodgers are, of course, the big bad Dodgers, and that is a very scary thing. The benefit to the Blue Jays, though, is that they are at home. That is the only good thing that they can really take from this, is that they're at home, and they have the better record, and they're they're not the team to beat. They're the underdogs. They have the support of literally everyone else, because everybody hates the big bad Dodgers. But I'm of course kidding. But big games, they have to go ahead early. They have to make it hard for the Dodgers. All right, let's move into the next sport here. That'd be the NBA. The NBA kicked off. The NBA kicked off yesterday. I was supposed to film this earlier, but I didn't, and so now you're getting NBA coverage. Ooh, can't wait to talk about this game later. A little bit of a rematch going on here. Um, but a couple of things I want to talk about really quickly. Knicks, the Knicks won, and they popped off. I will say, Cavaliers are a very good team. Um, you know, and they they started off their campaign at home, and they started off right with a win. OG Anunoby popped off 14 rebounds and 24 points. Kind of ridiculous, kind of insane. Karl Anthony Towns looking good too. Two double doubles there. And yet, 15 points from five guys at the very least. That'll win you games. That's good point total. Um, really looking at this, uh, I haven't really been able to watch, but I can't really speak on the new center. But team's looking good, and hopefully they can continue to do good things. Off to a winning start, and let's hope that they keep going. And the other team I want to talk about today is the Phillies. Well, before I talk about that briefly, Lakers lost to the Warriors, so that's something you got to talk about. There's a notable missing man here, um, but Luka popped off. Holy! And on the other side of the court, Jimmy Butler had himself a game. I mean, if you look at this, Curry doing Curry things, it that the West is always something that people look at and it looks tough. But I mean, if you have a dude dropping 40 points, 9 assists, 12 rebounds, nearly a triple double, but still an insane stat line, and you're still losing, it's got to be tough out there. It's the Wild West, folks. And looking at the Phillies game, which is what I want to talk about, they have against the Celtics. They had a really good game here. Not so much for the Celtics, obviously. It was a very close one. Philly dropping 42 points in the fourth quarter is very clutch as well to balance out that terrible third quarter. Jeez. The thing I want to talk about, though, is, of course, this man right here, VG Edgecombe. All right. Dropping the 34 points, which was, I believe, the third most points for a man making his NBA debut. That's something to look forward to. You look like you have a good team here. You have him. You got Maxey. You're looking like you could do something with that. Embiid is stinking it, but you know you have a good team going on here, and hopefully you bounce back from your terrible display last year and go and do something. That's the hope if you're a Philly fan, and if you're looking at the Celtics, it's tough. You've lost your star guy. You're still putting up some points. You're still putting up well. You still have Jalen Brown. Your team's not cooked. Okay, your team didn't like rest all of your hopes on Jason Tatum, but he was your star man. And so that does hurt. Um, and I gotta feel for you guys. I gotta feel for Colin. But it's still so funny to me. Uh, just being an Knicks fan, and for your sake, for basketball's sake, I hope you still play well, and can lose to the Knicks in the playoffs again, and that would be really exciting. So yeah, and finally, I want to turn it over to the NFL, where we talked about last week, and there's a couple of things I want to talk about. Holy crap! I didn't see that, dude. How do you get shut out? That's embarrassing. Gino, oh my gosh. Sorry, I was I was meant to talk about the unction. Let's talk about the unction, guys. The Unk Bowl, Bengals Steelers, Thursday Night Football, prime time, and Joe Flacco drops 342 yards on the Steelers' head, uh, and outshines Aaron Rodgers, who did have himself a good game, but those two interceptions don't really help. And the Steelers, they dropped this game to the Bengals. And it's a rather interesting scenario here. You've got you got two old heads in the game who are they've had rather interesting careers, definitely different careers. And now they're here at these teams in the middle of the Midwest, in the middle of nowhere, and it's rather interesting that they're able uh, to put on this fantastic display for everybody to see. 33-31, very close game. This is not the game I really wanted to talk about. The game that I wanted to talk about, the game that I should have been talking a little bit more about, because you look at the score, and I mentioned it last week, and it's nothing new, but you know how it happens, and you're all of a sudden you're baffled. Broncos Giants, where the Broncos dropped 33 points in the fourth quarter. How do you fumble that hard? I mean, you're looking at it, you know, Jackson Dart thinks, he's won the game. You play well for you play well for a game. You're building your points how you should be, and then you just fumble it all at the end. Like you give up the comeback of all comebacks, and you got to tip your hat to the Broncos and be like, wow, that's that's it's a sight to see. You know, at some point in this game, it was 26-8, and the game ended 33-32 to the 32-33 to the Broncos. And you got to sit there and just wonder like how you fumble that hard. You know, it's in New York's blood. Um, but yeah, looking forward to the other NFL games. I have to say, it's a rather interesting scenario predicament that we have put ourselves in. Um, and yeah, the NFL is probably the most unpredictable it's been in a while. Okay, the Colts, they're playing well. You have, the Patriots are playing well, which is unfortunate, and you know that it makes sense. You have up and coming like stars, and then you have results every week in and week out that you just can't predict. And it's not like a Premier League season where it's like 38 game weeks and it doesn't really matter. These one or two games could mean everything. Um, like this comeback for the Broncos could mean a lot more for the Broncos. It's not going to mean anything for the Giants. All right, let's be real here. It's a New York team. They're not going anywhere. But it means for the Broncos. It means something. I mean, you look ahead. They play the Cowboys. That could be another win. And you start to think as a fan. And, you know, I really hope the Jets go 0-17. Not really, but yeah. That's all I have to say for this week. We'll see you next week where we talk about a lot of different things. I haven't seen my face cam on this, so I don't actually know if it actually showed, but it's supposed to be there. If it's not, well, I hope you enjoyed the format of the video, and we'll see you next week in sports. See ya.